Welcome to the Coming Home Well podcast, the show that educates, supports, and advocates for the veteran community. Your host, Dr. Tyler Piron, U.S. Army retired, will bring you exciting conversations with amazing guests about resources, research, and military history, all geared to helping our warriors to come home well. Here's your host, Dr. Tyler Piron.
Welcome back to Coming Home Well. I'm your host, Tyler Piron, and today we're going to be talking with Jeremy Harrell. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us. You're from Veterans Club Incorporated, which is primarily in Kentucky, right?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. By the way, I'm looking forward to this conversation. Yes, we are based in Louisville, Kentucky. Although we primarily focus on this region, we also serve veterans and first responders around the country in different ways. Yes.
So let's talk about what Veterans Club is.
Yeah, so originally we started as a social group, and the way that our organization began was it was a private Facebook group, and the intention, it was like an idea on a napkin, and the intention was to get a few veterans together once a month just to connect and to hang out, to interact with one another. And over the course of time, we were able to meet different needs that really allowed us to grow and become a actual nonprofit. And what we focus on is healing, recovery, vocational training, and housing assistance. And, just about anything, anywhere there's a need for veterans, first responders, and their families, we'll do what we can to ensure that we meet that need. We're most known for equine facilitated mentoring, which is a form of equine therapy. That was one of our first programs, but we have 8 nationally recognized programs to talk about.
So equine therapy, I suppose in Louisville, Kentucky, horses are a big thing.
Yeah. It's really funny because I grew up here and I grew up in the city, and I had never touched horses. Obviously, I've been around horses at Churchill Downs, home of the Kentucky Derby, which we just had recently. But outside of that, I had no knowledge really of horses. And then I went to a program out in Kansas, and that's where I really got to learn a lot about horses. And I brought that back to Kentucky. The funny thing about being in Kentucky is a lot of people across the country sometimes assume that everyone in Kentucky has 4 or 5 horses in the backyard. And it's just funny how that works. But yeah, so, we are at the horse capital of the world. And so we decided that we should probably do something for veterans and first responders that can help them overcome challenges with horses.
I sort of feel that we're out in the country, and where I was at, it's rich people horse country. It's not like, my church literally has a blessing of the hounds for the beginning of the fox hunting season with all the people on the fox hunting horses and the dogs, and that's called blessing of the hounds. So I totally understand how people like myself, who has no horses, very limited horse background, but all the people in my church, the rich old ladies, they all go fox hunting and on their horses and over the trails, and you'd think everybody has them because, they're everywhere, but they're not. So you guys started as a social club. I think that is so cool because it's just sort of, hey, let's get together. Now, there's a couple military facilities right nearby, right? Like a couple military bases.
Yeah, so I live about an hour away from Fort Knox, Kentucky. And then there's Fort Campbell, Kentucky, about 4 hours south of me. So pretty substantial Army bases. And then there's, obviously some National Guard, Army Reserve training centers throughout the state. Very military-friendly state here. A lot of opportunity. There's about 300,000 veterans who live in Kentucky and call Kentucky home. So that's out of 4 million people, which was, the latest stat of how many we have living in Kentucky. So, if you live here long enough, you'll either know someone who is related to a veteran or somehow meet them through a third party. So we're a very friendly state.
So you got them around, but Louisville is not like a military town. And so you might not have a place full of military people. And so you created this club to sort of, hey, let's get together. And it sort of blossomed from there.
Yeah, when I come home from Iraq, I'm a United States Army combat veteran as well. And I deployed during the initial invasion of Iraq from 2003 well into 2004. And when I come back, like a lot of veterans, had a hard time kind of transitioning and kind of finding my way and kind of adjusting to the new normal, so to speak. And I just realized there wasn't enough common sense approaches to connection amongst our community. There were veterans who needed community, and there wasn't a lot of options. So I thought, well, maybe in a small way, I'll start hosting get-togethers once a month, and hopefully people will show up and we'll have a little bit of fun and we'll somehow get connected that way. And so that's kind of how it started. And then what we started to notice is that that was definitely a need. And so more vets would come. We grew exponentially. We're 6 years old, and we serve about 7,000 veterans just in this region alone, not including the ones across the country that we indirectly support in a multitude of ways. And yeah, that's kind of how this all kicked off. There was a need out there. I felt like I could do something to address the need, and decided to put pen to paper and kind of learn as I went. And it ended up being an organization that is sought out around the country, particularly with active duty military bases and any veteran space, and of course with National Guard and all that good stuff. So it's just really, really profound how this has come to be what it is today.
You jumped ahead of my question. I was going to, hey, what is your connection to the military? So you were in Iraq in 03, 04. I was there at the same time.
Okay.
I always say the best time to go fight a war is in the beginning, before all the rules and all the policies and stuff. So what did you do in the Army?
So in the Army, I worked at enemy prisoner of war camps. So Camp Bucca, Iraq, Abu Ghraib prison, did a lot of convoy security, basically anything the Army needed me to do. Really enjoyed, the time that I spent there, not necessarily in Iraq. There wasn't a whole lot of enjoyment there at that point, but I really enjoyed being in the Army. I served honorably for close to 9 years, and, got injured, had to get out of the game, so to speak, and tried to get into the corporate world a little bit. And it just wasn't for me. I just wasn't getting the fulfillment, and I never wanted to stop serving. And so I went out on a limb and quit a job that most people would say, why in the world would you do that? Kind of threw safety and security in the background like we tend to do as veterans, and decided to help my brothers and sisters and continue to serve that way. And so that's what I've been doing ever since, and I really enjoy it. Couldn't imagine doing anything different.
That's pretty funny, because I had a small office at Abu Ghraib during the same time. So I know the area, I know the convoys, and I know the people that flow back and forth to Bucca. So yeah, I was involved in a lot of the same things. So I have a mental picture of what you were doing and where you're at. And it was not fun.
No, not at all. We were with the 800th MP Brigade that you might know.
Yep,
and then
I sure do.
We were there so long that we fell under the 16th MP Brigade too. And so, not the best of times, but really proud to have served. There's a lot of controversy around that particular prison, but I'm happy to report. And I always have to preface this and put a disclaimer out that I was not involved in any of that, but just really, really loved the opportunity to serve this country. And I miss it really just about every day. And it's not so much those things. It's the camaraderie, it's the connection, it's the brotherhood, sisterhood. It's just really hard to replicate those same level of relationships on the civilian side. And so, we're trying to recreate those the best we can outside the uniform these days. And we're doing a pretty good job of it. But I think that's key to avoid isolation and things that come from isolation, which is generally a negative environment.
You really hit the nail on the head, the isolation or the lack of connection. And it really boils down to a lack of trust, because in the military, there's, even though you might be in different jobs or different services or different eras, you meet a veteran and all of a sudden there's that connection. It doesn't matter where you served, how you served, a Navy guy, an Air Force guy, whatever, there's that connection. You'll see it like at a VA waiting room or any place that has a more dedicated military presence. And it's always amazing to watch, especially when you get veterans of disparate backgrounds and whatever, and get them together. And guys, I can tell you 100% that Jeremy was not involved in anything at Abu Ghraib, because I was the guy who investigated it all, and I never saw his name, so he's good. Hey, so you guys form the connection, and finding your tribe is what we call it, is finding your tribe of folks to be with, hang out with, and sort of meet those needs of connectiveness, of belonging. And that is often one of the biggest things that's missing when you get out of the military, especially if you've been in for a long time, or it's your first thing after high school, which it is for so many of us. You are in high school, so you have a tribe there, and you know people, you know how it works. You go in the military for, 3 to X number of years, and then you get out, and all of a sudden you're like, ooh, What do I do now? Finding friends as an adult is hard.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. So you form this club, and you saw a bunch of needs that people had that they're asking, like, hey, what about this? What about that? You saw that need, formed this group, formed the nonprofit. So what do you guys do now?
Yeah, so we have 8 nationally recognized programs. I'll start with the first one. We started with equine facilitated mentoring, and it is what it sounds like, right? We've had over 400 equine sessions since the inception of the organization, and what we're trying to do there is to use these beautiful, majestic animals to create a buffer and create an opportunity for us to have hard conversations about the experiences we've had, and to kind of use horsemanship as a way to kind of help us get over or at least have an understanding of why we feel maybe the way we do. Because the thing about horses, I say this all the time during our sessions, we're pretty good, military folks are pretty good at kind of playing the game. But you can't fake it till you make it with a horse, right? Because horses are intuitive and they have a great understanding, and essentially it's like a mirror. And so, they're also not poodles. So you can't go and pick a horse up to get it to join the herd. You have to build that trust. And trust is difficult oftentimes in our community. And these horses help do that. They help reduce stress. They help build interpersonal relationships, communication, confidence, all the things that are necessary to survive in the civilian sector, and all the things that at one point in time we were really good at. We just need to resharpen those skills. And so we do that through this program. So we serve veterans, first responders, active duty, spouses, even military children. So we serve the whole family. We have a whole family approach, because we realize very quickly that we can do all that we can for the veteran. But if the family has been through tough times and they've been through adversity and no one's there to support them, it's not going to do a whole lot of good. And so we decided that we were going to allow families to get together and overcome these challenges as a unit. And it's just been really good. So that's something we started out doing, and we still do today. And what's interesting is we're much more polished today than we were 5 years ago, but the results are still the same. And I think the results are still the same because it's not necessarily just what the horses do. Obviously, it's about the connection. It's about the tribe that you mentioned. It's about getting together and just, it's always funny how, it's a big country that we live in, but we can always run into somebody like us, like today. We were in the same place at the same time, right? And so all these stories. Well, I was at Fort Campbell too back in 2006. What unit were you with? And so we create this opportunity to connect. And the goal for us is at the end of that session, obviously we want them to leave feeling better than when they came, but we also want them to connect and start, getting each other's phone numbers and doing things like that. So that's kind of the first program. And then, we have the Operation Jeep Build program, which
I love this program.
Yeah.
As I was learning about it, I said, this is so cool. Like, I'm not mechanically inclined at all. I have many friends who are, and I literally had to have a friend come over. I was complaining about how much brakes cost to do at the shop, and he's like, Tyler, that takes like an hour. I'm like, yeah, that's what they said, a lot of money. And he's like, hey, I'll just come over. I'll show you how to do it. And boom, he's showing me how to replace the brakes on my wife's minivan. And I was like, oh, this isn't tough at all. And he's like, yeah, no, it's not tough. But, so I was so impressed with the Jeep Build. I need you to start from the beginning. What is it the Jeep Build does?
Yeah. So initially how it started out is we would partner with local Jeep clubs because, military and Jeeps, we go back since the beginning, right? There's a lot of crossover between the two. And we would take veterans out on these Jeep rides, and we'd go off road, and they'd get to experience a little bit of what that looked like and felt like. And we have a special place that we go. It's about 700 acres, and there's beginner, intermediate, and advanced trails. But then in the middle of the forest, we would always park the Jeeps in a circle, and we would throw some charcoal on the ground and put a grate over the charcoal, and we'd cook and have lunch. And a lot of these veterans would, they'd walk around and say, how did you get your Jeep that high? Or how did you put those tires on? Or how'd you get this? And how'd you do that? And I just kept hearing that. And I thought, well, let's take this thing to the next level. Let's create a program where they can learn how to do these things. and then they can come out here and enjoy the fruit of their labor. So we went back to the drawing board, and a good friend of mine owns Gear Off-Road, and he specializes on Jeeps. And he's an ASE Master Certified Technician, all that good stuff. And he said, hey, we can use our shop, and we'll get some donated Jeeps, and then we'll teach veterans how to take it all the way down to the frame and rebuild it into this off-road machine, and then we'll take it out to the trail. And I thought, yeah, let's do that. And so we just asked, right? And then all these people were calling and saying, hey, I have a Jeep that's been sitting in my driveway. It's got an ecosystem growing in it, but I think there's still some good bones there if you want to use that. And so we'd pull it in a wrecker, we'd put it on the lift, and we'd start showing veterans how to tear this thing apart, how to do some framework, how to do painting, how to do small engine repair. They touched every piece of this Jeep, and they learned as they went. And so in the midst of all that, as they're learning this skill and this trade, they're connecting, they're talking, they're creating this family, this unit. And the next thing you know, here's this beautiful Jeep. And then here's these really, really tight-knit relationships, the kind that we had when we served. And then we'd say, okay, here's the deal. We're going to take this thing on our next trail ride. And here's whoever don't have a Jeep, and you always wanted to drive a Jeep, I'm going to give you the keys. And if you break it, we have a program that we can fix it, right? And so we're building these fleet of Jeeps so we can do that. And there's been veterans who have got employment in the automotive industry doing this. We're currently working on a apprenticeship through the local community college technical school here to give accreditation to what we're doing. But more important than that, we've created this family of everybody showing up on a Sunday morning and working on this Jeep together. And it's just really neat. And there's nothing like it in the United States. And
no, there sure isn't. I mean, I talked to a lot of different organizations, and, there's some auto repair and things. And I was like, Operation Jeep Build, what is that? And I started digging into it, and I was like, this is so cool, because it's definitely a subculture. Yes. There's Miata racers, there's Jeep people, there's the people who take their Jeep off the pavement. That's another whole group. There's a lot of people who buy these trucks, that never take them off the pavement. But these are like going out in the woods, and they're lifted. They got all the things to go do. And the veterans that are interested are the ones doing the work. And I think that is so cool.
Yeah, for example, we had a gentleman who is still in the Army Reserve. He's a young guy, maybe E3, E4, maybe 20 years old. He comes in and he goes, I've always wanted to learn how to weld. He said, but if you go to trade school for welding, you have to sit through all these classes, and who has time for that? And we're like, no, not here. We don't do that. If you want to weld, here's a helmet. Here's the apron. Let's go weld something. And he's like, right now? And we're like, right now. There's not a better time than now. And so here he is getting trained on how to, weld a little bit. I mean, it's not extensive, but he gets to understand how to weld and what it does and kind of the reason behind it. And he flips the helmet up and he goes, I can't believe it. Like I just was able to weld here. Right. Those are the things that we're trying to present, and the opportunities we're trying to create through that program. And in fact, in July, we're going on what we call a freedom ride. We're going to go to a place in Kentucky called Red River Gorge, which is what it sounds like. It's kind of mountainous eastern Kentucky. And we're going to do a overnighter, and we're going to pay for that thanks to generous donors. And we're going to allow these veterans to bring their spouses and their families. And we have cabins for them, and we'll go out and play with these Jeeps and have a good weekend.
Sounds like a ton of fun playing with Jeeps. I don't even know how much mud is going to be involved. Do you guys have that red clay down there?
Not a lot of red clay, but we do have some thick mud. And,
okay. Fair enough.
My hope is that it is not that wet, because we don't have enough wreckers for probably all the Jeeps that are going to be there. But what's fun? It's not fun if you don't get stuck, right? You have to get stuck.
You got to learn how to self-recover. See, you're adding extra lessons in there.
Yeah, resilience, right? That's another thing so that's another program we have. We just rolled that out actually a couple months ago. It's called the Resilient Mind Program, and essentially what that is it's for the veterans that we've been working with, and new veterans that come along who maybe had some stuff they had to overcome. We help them through our other programs to get on the other side of that, but we don't just want to leave them there in limbo. We want to say, okay, now that you're in a stable place and you have an understanding of what's going on, what did you want to do before all this stuff got in the way. And, well, I wanted to own a business, or I wanted to get my master's degree, or I wanted to be a better dad or a better mom. Well, we've created a program, a 12-week program, a curriculum built by subject matter experts to help and teach these veterans how to be resilient, but also how to get to the next level, how to level up. And we're in partnership with Harry Wilson, who is Russell Wilson, the Super Bowl quarterback's brother, with a program called Limitless Minds. And so we want to see these veterans get to the finish line. We don't just want to kind of get them over the hump, but we want to see it through. We want to make sure that we give them as many opportunities to become successful, whatever it looks like for them. And that's what we're dedicated to doing. So our first cohort is in progress. We've had no one quit yet. And the reason why it seems like they would quit is because not only is it the academic curriculum, but they also have to do a program you may be familiar with called the 75 Hard program. Mm-hmm. Right? That's a program created by Andy Frisella. So they're doing this simultaneously to build mental toughness, discipline, time management, fitness, eating better, all the things that we need that are the foundation of being successful. And so they're doing this in tandem. And January 1, our leadership had some mandatory fun. You remember that phrase, right?
Mandatory fun is the best fun.
That's right. So we all did it as a leadership team because as a good NCO, I'm not going to ask anyone to do anything that I wouldn't do myself, right? And so we're in the throes of that now, and it's going really well. And then, of course, we have our Women Warrior program, where we create a space for women who have served that's specific to the needs that they have in their community career. And so we've brought in some amazing women veterans to lead that and to be a part of that. And so that's a great program as well. We have the VCAP program, which is the Veterans Club Assistance Program. And kind of an idea of what that looks like is we may have a veteran that calls in and says, hey, I'm an EMT right now. I'd like to be a paramedic so I can better provide for my family. I just can't really afford the books. And we'll say, okay, no problem. We'll take care of that. And we'll provide the books so they can get promoted so that they can take better care of their family. Things like that, that's part of that assistance program. Obviously getting veterans in housing with homeless veterans, that's an issue, right? That's continuing on.
Huge issue.
Yeah. So we work through all those things with these folks. So yeah, we have a lot of different programs. And what we're trying to do is provide wraparound services, because the last thing we want to do when a veteran calls and say, I don't think we can do that. You're probably going to have to call someone else. Oftentimes, especially in the middle of a crisis situation, they may not make that second call. So we partner with 34 agencies just in Kentucky alone to make sure that we have some coverage, whatever the issue may be. We work very closely with VA, work very closely with other mental health providers. We just want to create a lot of solid opportunities for veterans in whatever capacity they need us. And it's been effective. It's been really good. And we continue to grow and expand. And we're trying to expand a little further outside of Kentucky. We're in the region, Kentucky, Ohio, Tennessee, Indiana. But, we'd like to get to Texas. It's where a lot of veterans live. We'd like to get to Florida, places like that. So we're well on our way.
It sounds like you have Kentucky well in hand, or at least if anybody's interested. It always seems to me that the greatest effects are, where it comes sort of naturally and organic. You recognize a need. I can't tell you the number of social workers that I've met and talked to that have created some new program that sort of combines something that they know about, but, saw a need for veterans with equine therapy or art therapy or fill in the blank. And they said, this would be awesome. And so all of a sudden they created this program or whatever. And because of the way that you recognize that there's needs, just like with the women's program, Women Warrior program, the needs of women warriors are different than some of the men warriors and vice versa. And parents and people that aren't married, they all have different needs, just like we're all different people, different backgrounds and different expectations and all those requirements. So I love how you have all these little different things, the very hands-on blue collar Jeep builds. Yeah. So looking on your website, which is veteransclubinc.org. So if you guys but we'll put it up on the Facebook page and all the social media. So you don't have to write it down while you listen to the podcast. So don't worry about that. But we'll put it up there. But it is veteransclubinc.org. And so it had the Women Warrior, and it was like one of those painting things that the ladies do, the wine painting. And I don't know if there's wine involved.
Yeah.
But I was like, that is perfect because
Yeah.
it's a little bit different. I've done those before, if it wasn't just ladies. But yeah, it's like one of those, all right, maybe it doesn't have to be as gung-ho as, fixing a Jeep, though I'm sure you've probably had some women get involved with the Jeep builds because
Absolutely.
I know a bunch of women that drive Jeeps and they're more gung-ho and a little more risk-taking than some of the guys. I was always like, dang, watch them go. You wouldn't have think it.
Yeah.
So,
And all of our, I'm
go
sorry, go ahead. No, I was just going to say all of our programs, are open to women and men alike, but we wanted to have something, specific
Mm-hmm.
for women. And so that we decided that we'd create that space for them. And how we come up with these programs, we do a lot of research. We do a lot of surveys and asking. See, I think that's what's lost sometimes is oftentimes we assume what the community needs, but based on some numbers somewhere. But we send out, hey, what do you want to see more of? What do you need? Because the changes and the needs in the community, they shift, and we have to be able to pivot if we want to be able to serve them in the way that they need to be served. If we just did one thing and we were set on that one thing and that one process of doing it, well, times change. For example, not to bring it up, but just the pandemic, we had to pivot a lot, and we were still able to hold over 85 events that year. We didn't lose anyone in our membership to veteran suicide. We were able to do some really good things, even under those stressful situations. So we like to be able to pivot when necessary to provide the best kind of service to these folks that we can. And so, we're always asking, what is it that you need? What is it right now that you're going through that we can help with? Or what would you like to see? We do concerts, we do sporting events, we do all kinds of things like that too. So there really isn't a limit. I tell people, these are what we do at the core, but there's no limitation. Someone called and said, hey, what about pickleball? I guess that's a new fancy game that's come out. And I'm like, well, I don't know what it is, but we can sure figure it out. And we can have a day doing pickleball, and we can put stuff on the grill, and we can do all kinds of different things like that. And that's why I think, the folks like to be a part of what we're doing so much, is because we are willing to listen to the actual community, to the actual veteran or active duty service member. And then we take that and we say, okay, let's make it happen. And so I think that's one of the reasons why folks like to be a part of it.
We talk about medicine as evidence-based treatment.
Right.
Does it work? And that's why, the FDA has to approve medicines and things like that. And you have to make sure that the evidence shows that it works and that it's meeting a need. Sounds like you guys are well on your way to meeting a lot of those needs, and they are dynamic. They shift, they change. The needs of not as many as there used to be. World War II, the Greatest Generation, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and then obviously 20 years of the War on Terror. Different needs, different requirements, different expectations. Back in the day, they had VFWs. I was thinking about the origin story of Veterans Club and like having a group meeting. And that's what the VFWs were. And nowadays, people just tend not to join as much.
Right.
And so I'm sure that has an effect as well. Absolutely.
And it's funny you say that, because we've heard from some state leaders here that we are the new model of VFW, right? And here's what we do, because we don't want, even personally, I don't want those organizations to die off. So we always check in and say, hey, let's partner. Let's have an event together. Let's try to get some of these. We serve all areas of veterans, but let's try to get some of these post 9/11 veterans in here. Let's get them plugged in so that the VFW, American Legions, AMVETS, all these VSOs can live on, because they serve a great purpose. It's a great organization. It's a great opportunity, but it's just, there's not enough energy to get people in. And then the other side of that is, oftentimes, I think it's getting better now, but oftentimes the whole family wasn't invited, right? And so that created conflict for post 9/11, because we're still in the middle of careers and raising kids. And so they were like, I don't know why people aren't coming. And I'm like, well, you have to welcome everyone. And so I think they're starting to kind of catch on to that. But yeah, I love to support. And that's one thing about us is working with veterans. It's not a competitive sport, right? It's all about partnership. It's all about collaborating as one giant unit to do the most good for those who were willing to give their life for our way of life here. And so I don't look at that. If I can help you in any way, we'll do that. And if you can help me in any way, then please do that too, because the main mission is that veterans are healthy, they're happy, and they're able to continue life and thrive. And that's really all we're about. We want to make sure that we we are able to support that way.
You know, you were talking about the VFWs and all the different VSOs, and they're wonderful organizations.
Yes.
And they're going through a shift as well. You know,
Right.
I see a lot of conversations. I'm a life member of both the American Legion and VFW, and I get involved, but it's also tends to be a different dynamic of folks that are involved, and there's a bureaucracy sort of involved, and so they're working through it, and it's really good to see because they're really, hey, maybe we need to change, you know, and obviously it worked great for different eras. And so that is something I'm always interested in is the current generation, then you got the Vietnam veterans, which are getting older now, and the Korean War veterans, which are fewer and fewer. And then World War II vets are, it's becoming less and less and less, but they all had different needs, but there's still a common thread. A lot of things have changed. We've recognized PTSD. We recognize we have a good idea how it happens. We recognize TBIs now. When you and I were in Iraq, we didn't understand TBIs and the symptoms and the issues. And that's in the last, I don't know how, I'm not good at doing math in public, 20 years.
20 years. Can you believe it's been that long? Holy cow.
It's changed a lot and much for the better. And so just like that, everything is sort of evolving. So you guys are mostly serving folks in the Louisville, Kentucky, greater metro area. I know you're everywhere on some of the extra things, but if I wanted to go do the Jeep build or meet up with you, where would I do that?
Yeah, so our headquarters is based in Louisville, Kentucky, because that's where the highest population of veterans in the state of Kentucky. There's about 50,000 veterans in the city there, and obviously Lexington, Kentucky is the second largest city with about 30,000 veterans. So yeah, we're willing to go in the holler if we have to, right? We're willing to go down to the mountains of Eastern Kentucky. In fact, we're going later this month. We really want to make sure we cover down on the rural communities because they just tend to not have as many resources. And so we're always looking at trying to expand our reach. In fact, we're working with the University of Kentucky Office of Rural Health to make sure that we get into these places and we offer our services to the folks who may be there that need it. So, we very much want to try to reach as many places as possible. But yeah, the majority of our events, just because of the geographical location and the accessibility to different things, are around the Louisville area. And but we would love, we love when people, for example, our Women Warrior Retreat, we have women fly over from Georgia, from other states who say, we just don't have anything, like that here. And so, we're going to continue to do that work and continue to try to make everything that we do more accessible. If we can't do it geographically, we'll do it virtually and create more access overall to what we're doing. But yes, primarily the Louisville, Kentucky area is a lot of where we make the magic happen, so to speak.
So you talked about the Jeeps being on Sunday, but obviously you have events all the time, all over the place. How does somebody figure out, hey, what is happening when? If they want to get involved or take advantage of some of these cool things that you guys are doing?
Yeah, so we're very active on all social media platforms, minus Twitter. We don't really get involved in Twitter, but we have our website, has a calendar of events on there. Last year, we had 212 events out of 365 days for service members, veterans, and families.
That's a lot of events.
It's a lot of events, but we have to have them on the weekend, but we also have to have them on the weekday, and we have to have them at night. We have to have them in the morning. We just want to create accessibility for everybody, regardless of their schedule, and realizing that some of these folks are single parents or working a lot, trying to make a living. So we don't want to exclude them, and we do a lot of events for those who are in treatment. One of our biggest programs that I forgot to mention earlier is in partnership with the Louisville Metro Department of Corrections. So essentially the jail here in the city, we have a program called Operation Valor, and we have a dorm set up in the jail where incarcerated veterans, if they come to jail, they have an opportunity to go to that dorm, and we provide programming all day long for those vets to overcome some of the reasons why maybe they're there, or a lot of it's unaddressed mental health stuff. Some of it is just inability to transition, and we just help them and give them the tools they need when they get out so they don't come back. So we're always, and we do that with Veterans Treatment Court. We do it with homeless shelters. We make sure that they know that just because your circumstances may be different, we're still here for you. We still recognize your service. We still honor you. and we're going to be here when you get better. So when you get out of those places, come stop by and see us, and we'll get you on the road to success. It's just really important not to forget the ones who are currently, trying to overcome some of the obstacles that were caused by military service.
There's a lot of folks. We've talked to so many folks. We had a whole series on justice involved veterans. We had another series on the folks who are homeless, or what did they call it? I'm trying to remember the phrase, but it's people with at-risk housing. So like it's transitory, or, it's day by day, or, they might have somewhere to sleep tonight, not tomorrow, or it's tenuous. That's a huge problem and in the veteran community. And we've got a lot of programs, but it also requires that outreach that you guys are doing to say, hey, these programs are available. We'll walk you through it. We'll pull you to where you need to be, because a lot of folks that are dealing with these are not able to really understand or know how to access the help that is available. And that is a great thing that you guys are doing with that, because it's so important.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Tyler, because it is difficult for some of these folks. In fact, here in Kentucky, 11% of the homeless population are veterans, and many don't know how to, either they didn't qualify for VA care because there's maybe a disconnect. Not every veteran qualifies for VA health care. You have to be on active duty a certain amount of time. You have to have a certain kind of discharge. But we're also big advocates for the ones who maybe made a mistake, right? Maybe a mistake and got a less than honorable discharge back when they were 19 years old. They may be 45 now, right? We're there for them too. And one thing that we do is every quarter, at least a couple times, we go out into the communities and we talk to these folks who are homeless, and we identify the homeless who are veterans, and we ask them what they need, and we try our best to part with our partners and with what we do to connect them to resources. In fact, not too long ago, we had a gentleman that walked in our headquarters. Our headquarters is set up like it's like an office on one side, but it's like a community center on the other, because we want veterans, first responders to come in.
Because it's kind of like a club.
It's a club. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so we had a guy walk in, and he, obviously you could tell that he didn't really have a place to go. And he just said, "Can I rest here for a little bit?" And I said, "Well, yeah, this is what this place is built for." Sit down with the gentleman, and within an hour and a half, we had him a job at a local retail grocery store. We had him connected to more permanent housing. We made him food. We have a full kitchen in our headquarters. We made him a good meal. We gave him some clothes that we had in our clothes pantry. We just made him feel like, hey, you're in the right place. We're going to take care of you. And he went on, and he's still there. He's still at Kroger. He's getting back on his feet. And that's just what we love to do. That's the mission right there. That's something that isn't talked about a lot, but it's definitely necessary. And you're right. We have to do everything that we can to provide a safe place for someone to sleep. Homeless veterans, that shouldn't even be a thing in this country, to be honest with you. And we just there's a lot of podium talk, I call it, right? But we have to actually put some actionable solutions behind this. Otherwise, we're never going to get those numbers down. And so we're really proud to do that kind of stuff. We really have a heart for those folks.
I was doing research a while back, and there is nothing more expensive than being poor. And I found that out, like, simple things that people who've never been poor, never been homeless, don't even think about. Like, I gave them a check. How do I cash that check? I have to go to a check cashing place, and they'll charge me, $10 or, some amount or some percentage. And, how do I get a place to live? Well, first month, last month, and a security deposit. Yeah. How do you, these things are difficult, especially when you don't have the money to just spend thousands of dollars or whatever it is. It's all these little things that add up to make being poor super expensive.
Yeah, and that's why our approach to, I say this all the time to some of our leaders here in the state. You can't put someone in a building and check off a box and assume that they're going to know how to survive. You have to provide some education, some training. So we do financial literacy. We provide education. We provide benefit representatives from VA and just from the state of Kentucky to come in and see what these folks are qualified for. And we do our best to not only find them permanent housing, but to also give them the tools they need to maintain it, because that's the other part of it. I've had veterans call and say, hey, I finally got an apartment. I have nothing to sit on. I have no bed to sleep on. So we'll go and get furniture. And, it's not enough to really just put someone in a building. You have to give them, it's like, for example, you give someone who doesn't have experience managing money, you give them $1 million. They're not going to have $1 million very long. There has to be some training and education that comes with that. And so that's the extra step that, sometimes costly. Yeah, it takes more time, but it's the right thing to do, because we want to see these folks again, but we want to see them in our community. We want to see them thriving and becoming successful and obtaining the goals they set out. And we don't want to have this revolving door of homelessness, because that seems to be what it is a revolving door, because there's no education behind it.
And all the other supportive services, mental health
Absolutely.
treatment, a job,
Yes.
all these things. I often think about it in the same concept that we do with the military. We take someone and do we just throw them in a barracks room and go, okay, good luck, figure out some furniture? And no, we give them a bed, we'll give them a sheet, give them some blankets, and the
Right.
basics and some clothes, and there's expectations. And so we sort of build that up from the very beginning of basic training or whatever that initial entry training is. And then over time, it builds up and become very self-sufficient, et cetera, et cetera. And then you want to move off post and, you get married or whatever. That's a whole different thing. But that's because you've developed the skills, training wheels, almost so to speak, of how to survive. But if you're dealing with mental health issues, or you can't get a job, or you're having a really tough time transitioning, and I see that a lot. We talk about it a lot in our show. The transition, especially if you're serving for a long time, more than 5 years, all of a sudden things are different. When you get out, your mentality is different. What you think business people or people want to give you a job want are different than what you need in the military. I often joke that, if you show up with a haircut with a good looking uniform, you're like 90% done in the military.
That's right.
As long as you look the part, you're probably doing okay. In the real world, people, expect more and expect different things, and it's so variable. So it sounds like you guys are hitting the nail on the head with that hammer of, hey, what do you need? Can we help you? Let's get the other organizations involved to get you those benefits you need. It's a huge issue. I forever am talking to veterans that don't know that they're eligible for X, Y, and Z, which is crazy to me, because I'm like, I want it all, baby. If I'm eligible, if it's worthwhile, there's some great programs out there here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I know we have a ton of them.
Yeah.
We've talked about them. Commonwealth of Kentucky, I'm sure there's tons as well. And a lot of people don't know about them. So getting those touch points like Veterans Club, they can sort of help nudge and push and pull sometimes, I'm sure. Hey, so I wanted to ask you, there's lots of different people out there, but I'm sure there are some people that you've run across, some veterans in the time that you've been doing this, that really stand out. Now, I don't want any names, but some of those great stories that sort of just like emblematic of what you're doing. Now, we talked about the guy with a Kroger job in off the street. Now, there isn't a better success story than that, so don't try to top it. But, some of those stories that sort of just stick out in your mind that sort of humanize all the things that you've been doing.
Yeah, one that sticks out is a gentleman that has been with us since we started congregating, before we were an actual 501c3. And when I met him, and I haven't met anyone since, that he had so much anxiety that I really thought that there's nothing that we could really do for him. And so I thought, okay, well, I don't know what we can do, but what we will do is we will love this guy, and we will take care of this guy, and we will make sure that he knows that he's welcomed here. And so over the course of time, he started to kind of relax. He started to kind of come out of his shell. Now, this is over the course, he's still with us today, but this is over the course of several years. And he was able, through equine therapy, through a lot of the other programs, he was able to overcome some of those challenges. So he used to be on 17, 18 different medications. He's now down to 4 meds. 2 of those he has to have. It's a physical thing, not so much the mental health part of that. He doesn't have to use a service dog as much anymore. He's volunteering, not just with Veterans Club. He's a mentor in a lot of our programs, particularly the equine therapy program. And he's just thriving. He's got a better relationship with his kids, a better relationship with his wife. And he's just really did a total 180 since he started being around the organization. And the reason why I mentioned that story is because if anybody's out there and they're feeling the desire and the pull to go and start something like this, if you don't have the answer right away, just simply love and take care of somebody. And then over the course of time, that's almost always enough for the interim. And then over time, you'll learn how to navigate and kind of work through some of the challenges. But that's foundational. And we need that as veterans. We need it as people, really.
And you can't fake that. You can't. You can't.
Yeah.
You got to be there. You got to love them with your whole heart. Even when they're challenging, trust me, I know sometimes I'm like, you got to love them with your whole heart.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is, the veterans have a hard time, oftentimes of accepting help. We are the worst. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that. I'm not statistically speaking, but
you're not going to hear any argument from me on that.
Lived experience tells me, and I was one of those guys for a long time that I thought, oh, someone else needs it worse than me. This is my new normal. We just need to suck it up and drive on, right? Drink water, change your socks, all the things. And in reality, that served us for a small amount of time when maybe we were in country. And I know that even in that small amount of time, it may have, saved our lives at times, but it doesn't necessarily, that mentality doesn't necessarily serve us in the civilian world. We're not always having to be in survival mode. And I think that's what a lot of us do. We're in survival mode. And so we just try to unpack that and say, hey, you don't have to impress me today. It doesn't matter what your job was. It doesn't matter whether you deployed or not, because that's a big hang up for some folks. I didn't deploy. I feel like I should have. Nobody has a choice generally on whether their number's called or not in that way. We just want you to be you. We want you to be here. We want you to open up to us. We want you to develop friendship, and we want you just to be relaxed around us. And, but we are terrible about asking for help. It took me a decade just to say, hey, I think something's wrong. I thought everyone around me was wrong. I thought, well, I'm not the problem. You're the problem, right? But I started to realize that after everybody I'd come in contact with, not everybody, statistically speaking, could be the problem, right? So then I had to really do that deep dive and look in the mirror. And that's what we're here to help do. We're not, and not in a negative way, not saying, hey, you need to get your stuff together, but we're here to say, hey, have you ever thought that maybe there are some things that you need to unpack, that there's some things you need to talk to someone about, to kind of try to work through. And then we do it in such a way, because we're all fellow vets, and that helps with our nonprofit, is that all the leadership are veterans. So we know the lingo. We have that instant, like you said earlier in the show, we have that instant bond, that instant trust that no one can replicate around the country. And so we're able to work through that. But yeah, that's exactly what happened with this gentleman that I'm mentioning. We also had a Vietnam veteran, which Vietnam veterans tend to be the hardest to reach. They've had to kind of find their own way for, I don't know, half a decade now, half a century.
Longer even, yeah.
Yeah, half a century. And so we had a gentleman come out to one of our equine sessions, and he comes right up to me, and I think we're going to greet each other, and I think we're going to have a great day. And he looks at me and he says, I just want you to know, I'm only here because my wife saw this on TV, and she thinks it'll help me. I don't like horses, and I don't like dogs, and I'm just going to be here. And I said, hey, just be here. That's the only expectation I have. Is whatever's comfortable for you. So we start going through the motions. He's leading a horse. He's got the halter and the lead rope, and the horse decides that it wants to roll, right? And so when a horse decides they want to roll, particularly on lead, that is a huge amount of trust, right? Because they're prey animals. Their only defense is to run. So this horse, he's holding it. He don't know what's happening. He's looking at this horse. This horse is literally rolling in the arena, and he don't know what to do. And I said, hey, it's okay. This is the ultimate display of trust. I don't know what you did with this horse, but this horse thinks enough of you that it's not afraid to be off its feet, right? So the horse gets up. We go through the day. He comes up to me, and he says, look, I got some physical stuff. I'm having a hard time standing. I'm going to have to take off. He's like, but I really appreciate coming here. And he goes to walk away, and he says, wait a minute. I need to say goodbye to my horse. Right? He turns around and he goes.
This is the guy who doesn't even like horses.
Doesn't like horses, doesn't really even like me, just for the sake that I'm existing, it seemed like. But he goes back, and I have a really good picture of him kissing the horse. He leaves, and unfortunately, like a lot of our Vietnam veterans, they're getting older. He had some medical issues. He passed away shortly after. But his wife would call and say, "I've never seen him smile as much in all the years that we've been married until he left that day." And that's the mission, right? That's why we exist right there. So that's just a couple. I could go all day, Tyler. But
I bet you could. No, those are fantastic. It is amazing how these different approaches work, and yes, you see that light, that spark. And there's another part of that story I think is super important, is getting the families involved. You talked about it.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing. It's the whole group coming together, and you can't do it in isolation. And there's so many, I've seen it so many times, is the spouse recognizes the problem. There is a problem of, interactivity or whatever, and they're the ones pushing the veteran to go do something, whether it's equine therapy or art therapy or talk to people or join a club or fill in the blank. It really doesn't matter, but they're the ones pushing, which is so cool. And I love the fact that you have the families involved.
Yeah. We just last Saturday, actually, we had a Veterans Club Family Fun Day where we rented out a rock climbing gym. We had the big grill, we call it. It's a grill on a trailer. We had music. We call it cornhole here.
Yeah.
They call it, they call it bags in some places. We had all that going on, and here it is. We had over 100 families, right? There's 100 families that are encouraging their kids to climb this wall. You got mom, dad, at least one veteran, maybe they're both veterans, and they're just spending the day together. And everybody had such a great time. And what that does is unfortunately, in a lot of instances, finance is the barrier to doing things like that. Maybe they can't get out. That's not always the case, but oftentimes it is. And we just try to remove that barrier.
There's always things.
Yeah. So we just try to remove the barriers the best we can. And we just say, hey, there's no expectation here. Climb if you want, sit down if you want, whatever you want to do. We just want you all to do it together. And it's just, I'm so lucky. I've never been more fortunate than to really just get to witness this on a daily basis, every single day, of this restoration within family units and families healing together and strengthening their union. And it's just an incredible thing that I get to do all the time. I can't even call it a job. It's just something I get to do. It's just beautiful. And we just want to continue creating those opportunities. We do Halloween at the farm, and the kids get to dress up. The horses, they get to take horses trick-or-treating, with little horse treats. It's just really, that's what we're all about here. We want to make sure that if there are families in crisis, particularly the spouses and children, that they know that, hey, I need something. I don't have an outlet. We want to make sure that they know that they can always come to us with or without the veteran present and tell us what they need, right? And one of the biggest things about that is what we recognize with the military children is, oftentimes if one or more parents are veterans and they have some sort of disability from their service, oftentimes the child may feel like they need to be a caregiver, right? And so they start trying to figure out how to be a caregiver, and they kind of miss out on their own development and their own dreams and desires. And we want to make sure that when these kids graduate high school, when they go into college or to work or the military, whatever they decide to do, that they're healthy and they're confident. Mm-hmm. And they have a fresh slate, just like they should, and that there's no stuff that they're carrying with them. And so this is our way of getting in front of that and being proactive versus reactive.
We've been talking with Jeremy Harrell. He's the founder and CEO of Veterans Club, Inc. Jeremy, I've asked you a lot of questions, but I'm sure I missed something. What should I have asked you about but didn't?
Well, you asked me, and I forgot to mention, right, that one other division of our equine therapy program is called restorative horsemanship. And I don't know how I didn't think it. We have so much going on, our minds in a million different ways, but this program is whereas the equine facilitate mentoring is more therapeutic in nature, this is strictly horsemanship. It's for those folks that say, okay, I really enjoyed being out here. I want to do more with horses. So we've partnered with the Kentucky Humane Society, right? And so all the horses, we have wild horses in Eastern Kentucky, but we also have a lot of horses that are abused, neglected, surrendered, that have trauma, right? So I thought, wait a minute, what if we take these vets, first responders, and families who also have trauma and things they need to overcome. What if we train them on how to fix these behavioral issues in the horses so that they become more adaptable? It helps the Humane Society, but it also helps us internally. It creates that mission purpose. So that's another aspect of what we do. So these veterans get paired up with a horse, and they work through these behavioral issues, or they work through this training, and then they get to watch this horse load on a trailer, go to their forever home where it's going to be safe, secure, fed, and happy. And they had a hand in that. And so that's another part of what we do with the Humane Society here. And I don't know how I didn't remember that in the beginning, but here we are now. It's still.
Hey, we've talked about a lot of stuff. So you guys do a lot of different things. So yeah, if we didn't hit every one of them, that probably would have been okay, because you guys run the gamut of services for veterans. I'm really glad that you're out there in Kentucky. You're reaching out to the veterans. Guys, if you are, and gals, if you're out there in Kentucky, anywhere near Louisville, go reach out. If you've got questions, they are trying to reach out everywhere, so just reach out to them. But especially if you're out in the Louisville, Kentucky area, just, hey, go. If you need something, maybe they don't do it now, but they'll take that into consideration and try to help you. That is the coolest part about most organizations I've come into contact with, especially the ones that have developed organically. You know, what is that lane in the road? It's helping veterans. Well, what does that mean? It means everything. And so that is an amazing story. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us on Coming Home Well. I'll leave you with the last word. Anything you want to leave us with? Yeah, actually, we do a lot to help veterans who may need some sort of assistance, but we want to be clear in saying that maybe you don't need anything currently. Maybe you just need connection. Maybe you just want community. Maybe you just want to be part of it. Maybe you want to volunteer, be a mentor, be a leader. We invite you to come alongside of us as well. You don't have to need anything. You don't have to have anything like that. You can just join us. We do a lot of recreational. We do a lot of, our motto is doing life together. We do a lot of things in the community together to have fun, just to relax and enjoy each other. But we also need other good leaders. We need other mentors, folks who have figured it out over the course of time, to come and be alongside of us. The harvest is plentiful, the laborers are few. And so we just want to put that call to action out there. And maybe you can't do it physically, maybe you can't do it geographically, but if you feel like you can do it financially, and you've loved what you heard here today and you want to donate that way, by all means, go to our website at veteransclubinc.org. It's very easy to donate that way. And I can assure you 95 cents of every dollar goes back into the programs. We have a small staff. Yes, we have to work harder. We're okay with that, but we want the majority of the funding to go back into the programs as it should. And so we're willing to work the weekends to make that happen. So thank you all for listening today and taking the opportunity to learn more about Veterans Club. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us on Coming Home Well.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us this week on Coming Home Well with Dr. Tyler Piron. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and a review. Thanks again. And until all are home and all are well, this is Coming Home Well.